I get a lot of recommendations about what game I should try out for my next analysis, and I do genuinely look at the games you guys suggest in the YouTube comments. This one, Alpha Prime, was suggested by a YouTube user by the name of Andrew. I don't remember the specific name, I'm sure he'll leave a comment below and I'll heart it. Just note that if you're suggesting a game, phrase it in a way that's not just play insert game here. That gets picked up as YouTube spam and I'll probably never see it. Also, it's a little weird because it's phrased in a way that's a demand instead of a suggestion. Anyway, I will look at it and I will consider it. If it's interesting to me, I might make a video of it. But in this analysis video, let's cover Alpha Prime. Hey everyone, Jarek the Gaming Dragon here. Before getting on to the video, be sure you click that bell, otherwise YouTube just won't tell you that I posted videos because YouTube's great like that. But Alpha Prime, what is Alpha Prime? Well, aside from being an absolutely terrible name, if you Google Alpha Prime you might find the game, but you'll find a million different other things. It sounds like some Transformers fanfic. In fact, there's probably one already called that. But that's not important, if you look it up on Steam you'll find it immediately. My first impression even upon just looking at gameplay of this game was that it was unapologetically inspired by Doom 3, and for me that's fine. I know, a lot of people have a lot of strong feelings about Doom 3 because it's not quote-unquote a Doom game, but you can't argue it's not a good game. Not only was Doom 3 very advanced for 2004, I mean the lighting still holds up incredibly well and it's so moddable that the game can look astounding today. The gameplay itself feels so unique from anything else I've played. Yeah, I get it. I know everyone's gonna leave it in the comments. It's a slow game, it's not a Doom game. We've gone over this, you don't need to leave that. I don't really see why slow is always perceived as a negative thing. A slow-paced game can be really good, and in Doom 3's case, I like that. But the certain atmosphere of this game and the gunplay just feels so good to me. Nothing can replace the feeling of running straight up to an imp and blasting it in the face with a shotgun. And we never got this sort of feeling when it comes to any other game. The closest is Quake 4, and that still feels quite a bit different. That is, until this game came out. Alpha Prime, like I said, feels unapologetically inspired by Doom 3. When I was streaming it, I was just calling it budget Doom 3, and that's really what it feels like. And you know what? I'm more than okay with this. Alpha Prime is made by a developer called Black Element Software based out of the Czech Republic. Under this name, they've seemed to only have made 3 different games. Shade, Wrath of Angels, which just looks like a generic third-person game, Alpha Prime, and, funny enough, an expansion for Arma called Arma Queen's Gambit. In fact, in 2010, Black Element Software was acquired by Bohemia Interactive. Since then, they made a modern remake of an old 1988 game called Carrier Command. It's a real-time strategy game, and I can't tell you much more about it. The main point of this is just that Black Element Software seems to make games of all different kinds of genres, and they seem to be all over the place. The only one that I had any interest in was Alpha Prime. For a budget game, the plot is actually not that bad, nor is the voice acting, although it really can be all over the place. One character can have an awful voice actor, another character can have a perfectly acceptable one. Nothing by Hollywood standards, keep in mind, just acceptable. But the bad ones stand out, especially the Italian character who sounds more Mexican to me.
You know a lot, eh? He'll certainly find the safest route for me.
You know, Paolo no like shooting. Morbido. Uno body, due bodies, lots of bodies. Boom, bang, everywhere.
Like, does that sound Italian to you? I had no idea that was even supposed to be Italian, it's so butchered. The subtitles aren't even correct. Regardless, the main character that you play as goes by the name of Arnold Weiss. His voice actor is okay, and he's kind of a smartass throughout the entire game, which never really bothered me. I actually kind of liked it. The quote-unquote State Business Federation discovered an asteroid dubbed Alpha Prime with rich deposits of Habardium. Habardium is basically fuel in this universe, and it can get you a lot of money. This is also where the name of the game, Alpha Prime, comes from. During mining operations of Alpha Prime, miners started to go crazy due to the exposure of Habardium. Basically, Habardium gives off radiation, and that was far too dangerous, so they sealed off the asteroid. Arnold is recruited by a quote-unquote old friend, Livia, to rescue a mutual friend, Warren Reynolds. It's heavily implied you were in a relationship with Livia in the past, and now she's in a relationship with Warren. So there's actually an attempt to create some sort of character here, although I can't think of anything other than looking at Livia's face and just seeing her as a really ugly owl. Ugh, just look at that! Arnold Weiss goes down to Alpha Prime and is quickly stuck on this asteroid. The plot quickly turns into trying to find something or someone or some creature called Glomar. It's sort of kept ambiguous as to what this really is, but it's heavily suggested that Glomar can produce Habardium on its own. Effectively, if you had this, you could get as much fuel as you would ever want. It'd be like having an oil well that would never go empty. There's a lot more that plays into what Glomar really is, but that's the main point of what's going on involving everything happening. You meet up with a bunch of different characters, you fight against a bunch of other characters, Anyone can die, it's really a mystery who stays alive, who dies, but the main point for everyone is to get to Glomar, or in your case, stop them from getting to Glomar so that they can't have it. There's the trope of a big corrupt business that doesn't really care if people die as long as they get their profits. At its core, it's not a very interesting concept, but it's told in a better way than this, at least as well as a budget game can do, and honestly, it's not that bad. What I will say, without spoiling anything, is that the ending is fucking terrible. Now, plot threads between characters are mostly filled up and you know what happens, but it just ends on an awful cliffhanger that will never be resolved because this game came out 12 years ago in 2007, and they're obviously not going to make another one. So who knows, I was giving it a lot of credit because it's a budget game with at least a decent story, but the ending is so awful, I really gotta take major points off for that. I also need to take some points off for the way the cutscenes are presented. There are some genuine cutscenes in-game, but most of the cutscenes are you just standing there in third person, talking to someone on an intercom, which really feels like an exposition dump. It's not a very interactive or interesting way to look at what's going on. But who cares? No one cares about any of this nonsense. You want gameplay. That's really what we're here for, right? Well, immediately you can see the huge inspiration from Doom 3. It even looks like Doom 3's engine. And believe it or not, this is not Doom 3's engine. Apparently this is a proprietary engine called the Enforce 2 engine. I really want to know if this is based on id Tech or not, because it really does look like Doom 3, just not really as polished. I'm sounding like I'm complaining, but I'm really not. It's not that bad of a thing. If you're going for this sort of atmosphere, Doom 3's engine is not a bad thing to be inspired by. Again, this game came out in 2007, and for a 2007 game, it doesn't look half bad. The PC port is mostly perfectly fine. I never had it crash the entire time, and the frame rate never dropped. I only had 2 complaints. My first complaint is that you can't turn VSync on in any way whatsoever, and there's horrible screen tearing. I know some people hate VSync in every way possible, and usually you shouldn't turn it on in games because it messes with your aim, but in this case the screen tearing is so bad you need VSync turned on. Now you could turn it on in an INI file, but I just find it easier to turn it on in the NVIDIA control panel, and that's probably the better place to do it anyway. That's a small nitpick though, and a very easy solution. The bigger complaint I have is the FOV. For some reason people get upset when I complain about this, but FOV is a big deal. Having a small FOV is really obnoxious to deal with because you can't really see anything. And this game definitely has a small FOV. It's only 60. That's terrible. It's not absolutely the worst I've seen. That would probably go to Area 51, but Area 51's was 55 and this is 60, so it's pretty damn close. Imagine if you had to walk around an unfamiliar house with horse blinds on, and that's pretty much what this feels like. Now you can raise the FOV in a console command, but raising it to even 90 really breaks these animations and makes it look like you're going warp speed. So I kept it at 80, which is still too little for what I want, and that's why you're probably seeing some of the animations look strange, like the inside of your shoulder, but I'd rather have this than deal with 60 FOV. That's the big one I really had to get out, and a shallow FOV is something that I will absolutely never accept and find always annoying. I won't say it makes a game unplayable, but it's definitely a big notch down. And you can't blame this on a bad port because this only came out on PC. But I will give them some credit, the game looks perfectly fine for a 2007 game, actually better than most I would say for 2007, and it runs exactly as you would expect it with no crashes and no frame rate issues, so aside from the FOV, it's perfectly acceptable. I'm going to be saying Doom 3 a lot in this video, and that continues on over the gameplay. It really does feel a lot like Doom 3, and again, this is not a bad thing. The movement almost has the exact feel of Doom 3, except for you have more than white man hops. Which is nice, but jumping in this game feels awkward. If you're rubbing up against something and you jump, it pushes you backward, so if you're trying to jump onto a box, it's way more complicated than it should be to jump onto a box. So you may not have white man hops, but you have white man coordination. Aside from that, there's not really a whole lot different this game does than Doom 3. It takes the exact sort of atmosphere and setting and wants to do it again. Like I said, it's unapologetically inspired by Doom 3. Even the weapons kind of look like Doom 3 weapons in a way. And you know what? These weapons are actually really cool. Aside from the starting weapon just being a regular hammer, and holy, this puts Gordon Freeman to shame.
You could say, hey Dark. Jesus fucking Christ, I wish I could do that. Speaking of Sonic.
You can literally swing this thing as fast as you can click on your mouse, and the only faster melee weapon I've ever seen is the crowbar machine gun glitch in Half-Life 1. Other than that, these other weapons don't necessarily stand out in function, but they just look really cool. Your pistol's your standard pistol, although it reloads from the front. The assault rifle is just a regular assault rifle, except for it has Gatling barrels, which is just an odd design, and I'm all for it. The shotgun is kind of a standard shotgun, but it's pretty useful. I mean, it's a shotgun, you're not really going to complain too much. The sniper rifle seems to use energy and replace a battery up front when you reload. The rocket launcher is an interesting looking rocket launcher, but in all reality it's a single shot rocket launcher with an interesting reload. The grenades are pretty regular grenades, except for you throw them in kind of weird ways. You hold down the mouse click button and you'll throw them farther. As far as I know, you can't really cook these, they always seem to blow up at the same time. And although they do look like the Doom 3 grenades, they don't bounce around like they're made of rubber. And then the last one is a flamethrower, which sounds completely awesome, but this thing is fucking useless. I'm serious, this is the worst gun in the game. By the end of the game, I had over 1,000 fuel for it, or however much that means in game, because I never used the thing, because there was no reason to. I don't just mean this gun is less useful than the shotgun because it's also up close, I mean this thing is just unusable. It takes far too long to kill one enemy, let alone everyone around him also trying to shoot you, and as you're lighting that person on fire, he can just shoot you right back through the fire not caring. On top of this, there's no burn damage. You don't light people on fire. It's just like you're doing continuous damage until they eventually die and they don't flinch the whole time. Why would you do this? This thing is useless. You are not going to use it. It might as well not be in the game. How do you make a flamethrower useless and bad and... who? Why? How? I'm so disappointed. Flamethrowers are usually so much fun. It's sad because it really could have been a useful addition, especially since the vast majority of the game you're going to be using nothing but the machine gun and the shotgun. They're by far the two most useful guns in the game. In fact, the only time you're going to use the pistol is if you're out of ammo with the assault rifle and someone's at range. The sniper rifle can also be useful, but you don't get a tremendous amount of ammo for it, and the scope is really weird and kind of hard to use. So definitely my biggest complaints about this game is that there's not enough variety with the weapons. But the good news is, aside from the flamethrower, they all feel good and fun to shoot. The sound effects aren't necessarily the strongest, best things in the world, but they also don't sound completely awful. Enemies react accordingly when you shoot them, and they're not so inaccurate that you can't use them in any way. In general, the shooting just kind of feels good. This game also features a bullet time mechanic, which sounds incredibly useful, but really it's not very useful because you move just as slow as everything else around you when you're in bullet time. What is the point of this? The only use of this bullet time is to make aiming for you slightly easier, but since you're so slow, everyone else can shoot you just as easily as if you weren't using bullet time, so again, what's the point? To make matters worse, it doesn't recharge on its own. It uses Habardium that you pick up because apparently your character is fine and won't go mad when exposed to it. The explanation is that Habardium changes the time flow around people. Regardless, it doesn't recharge. You have to pick it up with this Fear health file looking thing, and in general it's just not very useful. It could have been a lot better. On the flip side, the combat music in this game was bitchin'. It really reminded me of something you'd hear in Time Splitters with that old industrial vibe. They actually put the soundtrack up for free on Alpha Prime's website forever ago, but Alpha Prime's website doesn't exist anymore, and finding it now isn't incredibly difficult. I mean, it's still on SoundCloud, but that requires downloading things through SoundCloud, and it's just kind of a pain to get. But if you're curious about what bitchin' music is playing in the background, it's Alpha Prime's soundtrack. If you want to download it again, just Google Alpha Prime soundtrack, don't ask me. I did see a lot of reviews that said this game was way too hard, and I can kind of see where they're coming from, but I don't really agree. The biggest thing with this game that might make it feel hard is that you take a lot of damage very quickly. However, there's so much health laying everywhere, including Half-Life style wall charging health stations, that it isn't really that big of a deal. If you're not watching your health and save in the wrong spot, you can find yourself in a bad spot where you have little health and there are enemies in front of you, but that's more so not playing games like this and just kind of making a mistake than really it being the game's fault, because there really is a lot of health everywhere. Really what it boils down to is that the enemies do a lot of damage to you and they want to make each individual fight a challenge, but you will get health in between that challenge and the next challenge. The challenge isn't impossible, nor does it feel cheap. It also doesn't feel too hard. I played it on normal difficulty and I was perfectly fine with this. What it does mean is that you can't play this game like a run and gun game. Your movement is slower, so you're not really encouraged to do that anyway, and you'll be spending a lot of time kind of peeking around corners. It's interesting because this game is most certainly inspired by Doom 3, but there's a little bit of tactical inspiration in here where they wanted you to take damage and wanted you to play pretty slowly. Not slowly in a way that's just very tedious, but slower in a way that's not run and gun. And you know what? It actually worked. You do get an extra item that allows you to hack objects, and this is actually very easy. You press tab by default, you look at what you want to hack, it'll just kind of do it on its own, no annoying minigame, and then you press E and it does it. This is really underutilized though. You mainly only use it to open up a few doors or maybe look at security cameras if you want to. They truly could have done a lot with this, and they just kind of didn't. As for the enemies, well, enemy variety is definitely this game's weak suit. Now, it's not just all humans, but it mostly is just kind of generic humans or robots that move like humans. The few times you're not fighting humans, you're fighting things like turrets, so really I would have liked to see some extra variety here. That's the biggest thing Doom 3 has over this budget Doom 3, is that Doom 3 had a bunch of different things like imps, whereas this game just doesn't. There are a few cases that break up the general gameplay. For example, when you're in a buggy driving along the asteroid's surface, which is a really cool setting, but it kind of also just feels like a worse version of Half-Life 2's Coastline. The buggy also has awful controls. It feels like it's very top-heavy, turns instantly, and then starts drifting. It's by far not the worst controls I've ever seen, but it could be a lot better. Regardless, I didn't mind this segment that much. It helped break up the flow of the game. I streamed this all at once yesterday, and the stream lasted for around 5 hours. So the game is roughly 4.5 to 5 hours long. A lot of you guys came and went, and again, it's really cool to be able to talk to you guys while streaming to sort of break up the monotonous task of just editing videos over and over again. It really helps me keep myself sane. But as for the game, you know, I can fuck with it. It's a budget Doom 3. It doesn't hide itself as being anything else, it does exactly what it looks like, and it does it fairly well. We don't really have many Doom 3 feeling type games, and I'm always down for more. It's not the best thing in the world, but it's certainly not bad, and I'm completely okay with it. I wouldn't mind playing it again maybe in a year or so. But that about sums up everything I need to say about Alpha Prime. If you want to know what game I'm going to be making a video of next, it's usually whatever I'm streaming. I have a routine where I stream a game, and then I make a video of it, then I go back to streaming the next game that I'll be making a video of. A lot of you guys come and go, and if you want to check it out, my Twitch is twitch.tv/JerrickForGamingDragon. If you want to support me more or see videos a day ahead of time, consider subscribing on Twitch or becoming a patron over on my Patreon, patreon.com/JerrickFor. You also get your own role over on my Discord, so check that out. Thank all you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.